Normally, I come on here and I like to call myself a sports therapist, but for Yankee fans today, I have one thing to say to you. It is time to panic. Hit the panic button. Call the Secret Service, the FBI, whatever you need. Pray to whatever God you have, because this season is in peril. And you might say, I'm overreacting, but I am Mr. Glass Half Full. I'm Mr. Optimist. I'm not a Yankee fan, but I tend to skew on the more positive when it comes to the Yankees. And after the Gerrit Cole news came out, I said it's over. Even if it is a minor injury, which he misses a month or so, you have too many things stacking against you. You may make the playoffs, but that dream of winning a World Series is over. You got there, you weren't good enough to win. You had a lot of flaws. I told you the last time I spoke to you a week ago, I felt the Yankees got better this year, even with losing Juan Soto. But sitting here today, you have Gerrit Cole, who says he's concerned. Concerned. That is not a good thing to say, or not a good thing to hear from your ace starting pitcher. He says he's concerned about his shoulder. Stanton says he has severe elbow injuries. DJ LeMahieu is going to be out several weeks. Luis Gil, best case scenario, is out 2.5 months, most likely 3. You're not going to have a healthy Tyler Matzik. On the lesser end, these are some names. Tyler Matzik could miss opening day. Jonathan Loaisiga's still recovering from Tommy John surgery. Brubaker, Cousins, Efros, all dealing with injuries. And the Yankees were a team that, yes, I felt were fine. I felt they were a legitimate World Series contender. But then you lose Stanton. And I didn't think the offense was perfect. I did think they recovered nicely in the signings they made. But you lose Stanton. So now you've created multiple holes on that offense. Not just third base, not just potentially, DH. You now have 2 major holes on offense, and that's before we even get to the depth issues they have on the offensive side of the ball. And then when it comes to pitching, I thought the Yankees possibly had one of the 3 best pitching staffs in the league coming into this spring, and now you're down 2 guys who I thought were going to be the lead guys, 1A and 1B, or 1A, yeah, you know what I'm saying. The top 2 guys in the rotation, Luis Gil, who looked like an ace for most of last year, and Gerrit Cole, who's been the best pitcher in baseball for the last 6.5 seasons. And now you may be without him. And we know nothing yet. We do not have any more information on this. But let's say, worst case scenario, it's Tommy John. You're losing him for the year and most of next year. This is a worst case scenario. Break glass in case of emergency scenario. And I'm not sure what side of the ball they need to address. Is it the starting rotation? Is it the offense? Defensively, they're going to be better no matter what. Their bullpen's going to be great. But you know what? If you don't have a solid offense and a good rotation, it doesn't matter if you have a good bullpen. It doesn't matter how well you field the ball. And this Yankee team cannot come out of the gate slow. And if they come out of the gate slow, Hal and Cashman need to get together and respond. Because you can't get to the World Series and then not sniff it. And right now, looking at this team with the injuries they have, they are not sniffing the World Series. Making the playoffs is not a successful season for this team. This is a team that was supposed to get back to the World Series. This is a team that is supposed to rival the Dodgers, and they are not that right now. And if you don't have Gerrit Cole, and we know they're not going to have Stanton and Luis Gil, and like I said, on the lesser end, DJ LeMahieu and the other guys dealing with injuries, you are in trouble. The American League is weak, yes, but the Red Sox got better. As much as I don't think the Orioles were on the Yankees level when both teams are healthy, they are a young team that you would expect to take a step forward. So Yankee fans, I ask you, and even if you're not a Yankee fan, looking at this Yankee team, do you have any hope? 888-808-1019. And I'm not even sure, like I said, what side. Is it the starting lineup or is it the starting rotation? Do they address? Can they address it? There's names out there, we'll get to that later. But can they even address it right now? They didn't want to address third base. They wanted to go with internal options. They're not even thinking about bringing back an Alex Verdugo. Nolan Arenado was in Tampa, and they weren't even thinking about it. And the other thing that concerns me, as a guy who has really appreciated Gerrit Cole throughout his entire career, in Pittsburgh, in Houston, in the Bronx, this is his second straight year with an elbow injury. Starting the year with an elbow injury. Before they even get the tests, to say you're concerned is a terrible outcome. Just right off the rip. Because these guys know their bodies. Stanton and Cole have used the words hopeful, but it was not the words they led with. Luis Gil, on that injury front, that was something we saw Clark Schmidt, if I'm correct, I'm almost certain they were the same injuries. And Clark Schmidt missed a huge chunk, basically the entire season. Got back with enough time to get in the swing of things for the postseason. This is a disaster, and it is 100% time to panic. They can't, and I feel for Yankee fans right now. I've been in this position as a Mets fan. I've been in this position in other sports, obviously, too. But I've been in this position as a Mets fan. Yes, we're going through it as Knicks fans with Jalen Brunson right now, but the season was well underway when that happened. These are completely different things. This Yankee team is in panic mode. And if anyone has a drop-off on the offensive side of the ball, they're in trouble. If anyone is a complete liability, if Carlos Rodon is bad Carlos Rodon, if Stroman does not have his typical hot start to the season, if Max Fried has any type of regression in his ability, this Yankee team may be in trouble of even missing the playoffs, let alone winning a World Series. But I'll say this again. It's time to panic, Yankee fans. This team is not winning the World Series. And that was the goal. Last year was not World Series or bust. This year was World Series or bust. When you make it there, when you essentially run rampant through the American League and you make it to the World Series, the only way past that is winning it. Yes, making it there would sure suffice some of the fan base, would suffice some of the critics, would please some. But at the end of the day, that is not the Yankee way. Bars. This Yankee team was supposed to be built to win the World Series, regardless if Juan Soto left. On paper, healthy, 100% healthy. I told you last week, I told you all winter, this team is better than last year's. But you know what? When you start the season down with, in my opinion, your two best starting pitchers, when you start the season down with a guy in Stanton who many of you loathe, many of you do not like in the fan base, but he is your best postseason player. He is maybe your second most clutch player on the team. He's out. We don't even know if he's going to play this year. He's already said if he gets surgery, the season's over. So there's the potential. And again, this is what we've heard from the players. We do not have a final thing on any of this. So I'm not saying that they are going to be. But we could be seeing the Yankees start the season without Cole, without Gil, without Stanton, without LeMahieu, without Matzik. They're definitely not having Loaizaga. Cousins, Efrats, Brubaker, all guys who are part of this team and are going to play roles, maybe not the most important role, but a part of this team, could all miss the start of the season. You potentially could have a year where you don't have Cole, where you don't have Stanton. You don't have Luis Gil for 3 months. That is bad news. 888-808-1019. This Yankee team had one goal this year: win the World Series. And at the minimum, get back to the World Series. And I don't care how weak the American League is, when a huge chunk of your best players are out, you're in trouble. And even the year that that Aaron Judge carried them to the postseason, even that season, they still had a great Gerrit Cole. They still had the pitching side of the ball good enough to get them where they needed to get to. Pitching was supposed to be their strength. And right now, they're in deep trouble. Their back into their bullpen is fine. Luke Weaver, Devin Williams, they're fine. You might be without Cousins for a bit. He's battling injuries. He could be back. He could be on the opening day roster. But your depth is thin now. They had starting pitching depth. Thank God they didn't trade Marcus Stroman, because they'd be in deep, deep trouble. So what's the next step for the Yankees? Do they trade for someone? And if they do, is it a pitcher, starting pitcher, or is it someone to fill in at DH, to play third base? If you had to go the route to play second base and move Jazz back to third, you would rather keep him at second, obviously. They are one more injury to the starting lineup to being in hell. Their starting rotation is hanging on by a thread right now. Because I'm sorry, going into the season with one guy that we really feel like we could trust, one guy in Max Fried, that's not good. He was potentially your third best starter if Luis Gil did what he did last year. And then that's a rotation that I'm like, how many teams have a better rotation than them? Maybe the Phillies, maybe the Dodgers. I don't really think of anybody else. The Mariners, that's probably the team with the best pitching staff in the league. This Yankees team was supposed to be their strength, was supposed to be a complete pitching staff. But if you can't get to the bullpen, it doesn't matter. And right now, that's a huge concern. Also, we already had concerns. Most of you were more concerned about it than I was, that this Yankee team was not going to be able to keep up offensively with a lot of the teams they were going to be facing. And now you combine that with a depleted starting pitching. Their staff is in shambles. So where do they even start? You know, I thought the Luis Gil injury, not terrible. You signed Max Fried, and the whole goal is having him healthy for the postseason. You could use that excuse for one guy. You can use that excuse if it's not a serious injury. But when you hear elbow, and right now they're dealing with 3 elbow injuries, both the Stantons and Gerrit Cole's. When you hear elbow, that's frightening. You know, and we'll get to the Mets later on in the show. We obviously got a lot to get to. You know, St. John's, the Mets, Jalen Brunson, that loser, Draymond Green, the Jets, the Giants, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Fields. So much to get to. But when you look at the Mets with Sean Manaea, I am not as concerned about his injury. Why? It's an oblique. It is not an arm injury. I'm not as concerned about Kodai Senga's injuries last year. Why? Because they were not arm injuries. But when you look at the Yankees, and yes, it is a strained lat from Luis Gil, but that is an injury that keeps you out a long time in baseball. But when you see an elbow injury to your ace, and I've been through this before, I've had years, and I know Jack Hardy on the other side of the glass can attest to this, Jacob deGrom has gotten hurt days before the start of the season. Multiple times. Devastating. Obviously, that year, the Mets got lucky. And even with deGrom and Scherzer out, they were able to win 100 games. But they had to get all-time seasons from Taijuan Walker, Chris Bassett, David Peterson, Tyler McGill. They had to have guys step up in a way that they don't normally step up. So I ask you, Yankee fans, again, where do you go for? Does it even matter? How many of you have waved the white flag on the season already? How many of you don't trust this front office and this ownership to go out and make the moves necessary before the season? Now, I will give them this grace. In my personal opinion, because I do still think Brian Cashman is the man, if this team comes out and ends April, early May, and they're 500 or they're over 500 by a little bit and they don't look great, or worst case scenario, they're under 500, I think they will make proper moves because they are not looking to waste a year. Another year wasted of Judge. They're not looking to waste this year. But for me, I don't see where they go. It's scary. And I'm sorry, Yankee fans. I try to always come out here and tell you, I'm your guy. I'm gonna talk you off the ledge. I'm your therapist. And I can't do that today. Panic. Like I said, whatever God you need to pray to. If you want to, burn some sage, whatever you need to do to get the move. Maybe we should shave the beards. Away with the beards. Wait till next year. Maybe the beards, bad luck. George is haunting the team. But I can tell you right now, this team's not winning the World Series. And a week ago, 2 weeks ago, start of camp, I did not feel that way. 888-808-1019. We'll get more to the Yankees on the other side of the break. I will tell you some options they have. There are options out there. It does not mean they'll go after them. Some internal options that you won't love if they don't go make a move. Obviously, you can always reach out to me on my social medias. Pico Day _Gallo on X. Pico de Gallo 24 on IG. I always follow the WFAN social medias. We'll get back to this Yankee topic. We'll talk about some additions they can make if they were even willing to do that. All on the Fan. Anthony Gallo till 6 a.m.